Hey, everybody. We are here with Ronny Pascale, improviser, actor, producer, and host of Roast Yourself online. Ronny, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I am very excited for this episode.
Oh, this is going to be great. I'm really looking forward to this. First thing I want to talk to you about is you spent a lot of your time um, as as like an improv teacher.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, what uh, what do you think is the hardest thing? Because I know you teach a lot of drop-in classes. What is the thing that you have to teach people about improv that you thought you wouldn't have to teach them going into it?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh, Improv, well, so for the drop-in classes specifically, they are people that aren't necessarily like they're not taking classes maybe, or they're trying to get like better at taking classes or communicating. And I feel like drop-in classes are always people who don't have the best like social skills. So like you can't say this kind of racist word or this kind of like misogynistic thing. Let's start working on being better humans. I feel like I have to teach humanity a little bit more than I thought I would have to.
That's awesome. It's just it's funny because I mean I learned improv in high school and it was just those sort of things, and it's like the first thing, obviously, like kind of the first lesson is the yes and of it all, because you sit there and our teacher let us screw it up over and over again, and he's like, okay, so why did this scene go nowhere fast? Oh, because when you said you were buying a fish, you said no, these are birds. Yeah, like so it was that thing, and it's like, yeah, that seems pretty obvious. Like when you think about it, eh? It's kind of a team sport, isn't it?
Yeah, improv is definitely a team sport. Improv doesn't work when, yeah, like fish and birds, and like, no, let's agree that these are fish or birds and then have fun with the weird stuff. I think people don't trust their instinct of having fun. So people don't trust that they're good at make believe. And there's an improv book by a guy named Keith Johnstone that I really like that most people don't focus on as much. And Johnstone's big thing, his philosophy is like focus on like children are really good at make believe, right? Like 2 year olds, 3 year olds, 4 year olds, they're really good at making stuff up. But the older we get, the less good we are at making stuff up. And his book
Mhm.
is just about getting back in touch with your like childhood imagination, and that's what I try to like bring into it because I'm in New York, and a lot of New Yorkers don't. No one really uses that book, and I was like, no, no, that's the book that we should all be using as our Bible. But
Nice.
alas,
Who do you think is harder to teach? Or is there like a group that's harder to teach? Younger people, older people, people with some acting background, no acting background?
The easiest that I've ever taught was a group of high school kids. It was an all boys high school somewhere in the city. I was like, I realized I almost said like what school it was, and I'm like, no, we probably shouldn't do that. But yeah, high school boys felt like they were like really in it just to have fun. They didn't care about like whatever. And let's see, I feel like the people that I had the hardest time teaching, the drop-ins specifically, are older people who acted but didn't do well at it, if that makes sense. Of
Okay.
like they thought they did well, or like they're like, yeah, I was so good back in 1977, and I was like, all right, cool, what have you done? And they're like, oh yeah, one time I did background on I don't know, like a 70s show, like Knight Rider. I know that's the 80s, but. Uh, yeah, they're like, I did background on an episode of Knight Rider once. Here are my acting skills. And I'm like, cool, but let's do it this way.
You can only react to a talking car so many ways.
I know. I mean, talking cars are the coolest, though.
Uh, yeah, you spent time at the uh, People's Improv Theater in New York, and you produced a lot of festivals there. I was reading about you. What goes into putting together a festival like that? Like comedy festivals in general, but then you've got improv festivals, sketch festivals, and like what goes into finding all these groups and organizing it and all that?
Oh, a lot of spreadsheets. uh, yeah, so I was the associate artistic director at the Pit. So the Pit has 3 stages, and there was generally 4 or 5 shows a night per stage. So there was between 12 and 15 shows a night, and it was just me and one other person booking it all. And So it was just making a lot of friends, a lot of connections with a lot of improv groups, a lot of stand-ups, a lot of sketch groups, and then seeing like what's good, what's not. And then for festival time, uh, to it, and then you would just be like, oh yeah, they did really well. We like them. They're like Friday at 8 o'clock in like the prime time slot. Like, oh, we kind of like this group. They're not great yet, but we want to give them some confidence. Let's put them like Sunday at like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever. Um, and it's watching a lot of hard to watch YouTube videos of like, why did you think this was good to send me? I feel like anyone listening to this is like, wow, that guy sounds like such an elitist, and I am. I am an elitist.
Well, I mean, when you've got the power, right?
Yeah. I stepped away from the power though in 2017 from the
Yeah.
pit because I did associate artistic director for 2.5 years,
Mm.
but I was burnt out. So I was just like, all right, what's next? And then what I realized that I like doing better is producing my own stuff. So I've Roast Yourself on YouTube,
Right.
and I've done some other things. And those give me infinitely more pleasure because I have more creative control
Mhm.
and way less stress because I'm not worried about like different egos going on behind the scenes.
For sure. One of those things too that I saw that you had produced was Unauthorized, the musical. It was a
Hmm.
little earlier on. What kind of movies did you cover in that? Because I was reading about it, but I didn't see what movies.
Ooh. Unauthorized was actually what like catapulted my entire life and career. Uh, Long story short, my two best friends. So this is before I was associate artist director. I was just front of house manager at the pit at that point.
Okay.
So I was basically just in charge of like making sure the interns were sweeping and mopping and checking tickets. Uh, and then my two best friends were the bartenders. They were musical theater guys, and uh, and they also lived next door to me. I was living in New Jersey at the time, and they lived right next door. And my shift would end at like midnight. Their shift would end at like 3 or 4 in the morning. So I would get drunk and hang out with them, and then they would drive me home afterwards. One drunken night, I was like, we should make a Back to the Future musical. I have no idea where that idea came from. I think I just like pulled it out of my butt, said it out loud. They were like, great idea. And I was like, okay, cool. And then the next day, they were like, did you mean what you said last night? And I was like, what are you talking about? Uh oh, what I say? And they're like, let's do a Back to the Future musical. And I was like, cool. So, yeah, I produced that. And because that did well, the pit took me on. Uh, yeah, we did Back to the Future that did really well, and then we ended up selling it to a theater in Australia. Uh,
Okay.
our number two was Ghostbusters. No, no, sorry, Ghostbusters was three. Number two was Steel Magnolias as a full musical. So
That's amazing.
yeah, we did Ghostbusters, Steel Magnolias, Back to the Future, Hunger Games, and Nightmare on Elm Street.
Those are, oh my God, those are fantastic.
Yeah, our
I
Nightmare on Elm
love
Street was so good.
I love the idea of that. Like just instantly when I was reading, that just bounced right off of me. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds hilarious.
Yeah, it was just a dumb, drunken idea that somehow sold a lot of tickets.
That's kind of what this whole podcast was. It wasn't drunken, but it was very late night. Like it was almost a booty call of ideas. It's like, you up? Let's make a podcast.
Yeah, those are the best ones. Like roast yourself. My YouTube show is was a dumb idea one day. Like I saw an old picture of me, I roasted it, and then I thought to myself, "Wow, I just roasted myself." And then I was like, "Let's do that as a show."
That's awesome. And that was the next question I was going to ask is where the idea came from. But what do we think it is? Because I was trying to get the stuff together in time, but I couldn't. I was going to roast myself on here, but I couldn't get my teeny tiny little pictures from my yearbook in time. Needless to say, I look like the world's youngest sex offender. But uh, but yeah, it's what is it about our younger selves that we find so roastable? Like everybody looks back at their old selves and just like and instantly can dig into that kid in a way that borders the bullying.
Yeah, there's so yeah, Facebook was like 10 years ago you said this. You remember, like the Facebook memories?
Yeah.
The memory that day was I'm so bored. I wrote 10 years ago to that day, I'm so bored. And then an hour later wrote still bored and I screenshotted it. and recently screenshotted it because Facebook was like, 10 years ago, you were so bored. And then I posted it on Instagram and I was like, wow, what year is it? 2010. Ronnie wants you to know how bored he is right now. And so, yeah, there was this like, so I started doing the show, and then comedians come on, they give me an embarrassing picture, and then they roast themselves. And I noticed that the embarrassing pictures are always like teenage years. Uh, or the only ones that like fall outside of teenage years are like if they were like John Benet Ramsey type like pageant girls. Does
Oh
that,
my God.
yeah, like and then like more they're roasting their moms when those are the pictures. But generally there's some awkwardness that happens between like 10 or 11 to like 15, 16. Like we have acne, we have our bodies are going through weird shit, right? So we have like crazy acne, we have crazy hair, we have terrible fashion sense.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I feel like those are the best ones are when people go like between like 10 and 16.
That's for sure. It was funny watching the people and you see too, because you've got people of different ages. So when they were those ages vary, which means the different attire, the different haircuts and stuff is just kind of all over the place. And it's just, I mean, I was very simple when it came to everything. I had very short, fine hair. I couldn't do crazy stuff. I couldn't grow a rat tail. I couldn't do all this. But to see big, thick, like lion mane mullets and like all these different things is just awesome to see.
I had a rat tail and my grandma cut it off when I was sleeping one day. In hindsight, thank you, grandma. In the moment, hated her.
That's awesome. So the reason that we are here today is we have a movie selected that we're going to discuss. And while we were discussing, you brought the movie forth to me, and it was Con Air.
Hmm.
So why did we pick this movie?
Okay. I picked Con Air because I am, what year was I born? I was born in 1985. I got my first computer in 1996 when I was 11 years old and got the internet. I got America Online. So AIM isn't even out yet. And I think first night, I found out that you could go into chat rooms based on locations, right?
Mhm.
And I'm from Connecticut. I found a chat room like Connecticut Kids or something like that. And I met a girl really quick, and she was the same age as me. I think she's a year younger. So I was 11, she was 10. Uh, Surprisingly, there was no weirdness there. Like,
Thank
no,
God.
we said sex offender before. I was like, am I allowed to say that? Yeah, no sex offender, even though I was like, maybe this is that. But I don't think that was in my brain at that point. So yeah, we like chatted for like 6 months. And then one day, both of us were like, hey, we should meet up. And both of our moms are like, not if we can't go. So the four of us and my brother, so the five of us, went to go see a midday matinee of Con Air for my very first date.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. What are your first impressions of that movie at that age in that scenario?
So my brother is on one side of me, she's on one side of me, and there's a really dumb detail in the movie, but Nicolas Cage's daughter in the movie, what's his name? Colton? Man, I forgot what his name was, and I wrote it down somewhere. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh, the daughter's birthday
Yeah.
is July 14th. That's my brother's birthday. And when I'm like sitting there nervous and trying not to pay attention to her or anything else, my brother's like, my birthday's July 14th to her. My brother's like whispering at her. And I was just like, this is my date. Leave me alone. Go sit over there. And my brother wouldn't go away. Yeah, I was nervous. My first impression was nervous. I don't even remember the beginning of the movie until I rewatched it. I was like, oh, that's why he's in jail.
Yeah. And that whole thing about him being in jail, it still blows my mind. Just the overall idea of these guys were going to kill him.
Mhm.
He did self-defense, and then they give the reason, well, you're special forces, you are a weapon. That's not a thing, is it? Like I don't know. I'm Canadian. I don't know the American law all that great, but I'm pretty sure that that's not a thing.
No, I don't think it's a thing. I think the judge in that movie is way more liberal than most American judges are. Judges have like traditionally been very conservative, and Trump his big thing that he's did was like he overhauled the court system
Mhm.
for the last 4 years, and now it's even more packed with conservatives, even more so. So that would definitely not happen nowadays. But I also don't think it would have happened in 1996, 1997, where because I think they're like, oh, what you did is cool. You defended the honor of a woman using the training we gave you,
Yeah.
right? So for like, I think that's what a 1996 judge thinks. So to me, immediately, like that was a huge leap away from where I thought we were supposed to be.
Hmm. And what I would have put him in jail for was just that accent.
Oh my God, I wrote that down too. Thank God though, he kind of lost it throughout the movie.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was all over the place, but it was people with accents, especially people who aren't like, I don't know, just not British people. British people can just sink into something and just do it. But anybody else, it always goes in and out, in and out. Keanu's bad for that, especially in what was it, Devil's Advocate. But yeah, it was just like it was borderlining on Forrest Gump half the movie.
I wrote that down, and I wrote, thank God Nicolas Cage wasn't Forrest Gump. But do you realize who his best friend is?
Bubba.
It's Bubba.
Yeah.
I didn't know until I went on IMDb after. I was like, this guy feels like Bubba. This feels like Forrest and Bubba. And I was like, oh, that is Bubba.
Yeah. I had heard a comment one time. Somebody was talking about Michael T. Williamson in that movie, and it was like, do you realize that twice in 2 years, Michael T. Williamson has been dying in the arms of a like feeble-minded Southerner?
Yeah, it's crazy. People get typecasted in things and then get stuck.
I know, but and like let's talk about just the cast in general.
Mhm.
Like that has to be one of the coolest like like that prisoner cast was badass in that movie. You got what Ving Rhames, John Malkovich, Steve Buscemi, of like a young and into it Chappelle who got to improvise all his own stuff. Who else? Danny Trejo,
Yeah,
who legitimately when he did, I saw an interview with him on like Entertainment Tonight, something like that, one of those Access Hollywoods, whatever, and he was in character explaining all the tattoos, and I just thought that that was him. I thought they went and just got some hard dude from prison to play this guy because he was talking about all the tattoos and like each one is for a rape, and I'm like, and he's like bragging about it, and I'm like, who did they get to be in this movie? And I realized after he's actually like a really just cool dude who is just being all in character.
yeah, he seems to do that. Like Machete, for instance. Like that seems like the same character as this almost. Uh,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, all right, cool. But then if you know his personality in Los Angeles, he owns like what a donut shop, for instance.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, this dude is like seems like he's actually like a good dude in real life.
Yeah, for sure. And it was just, but like that cast overall though, like they didn't leave any gaps in that cast. Like everybody was so cool.
Yeah, I feel like they hit every stereotype though. They like the diversity was across the board.
Yes. It was diverse in its racism. Almost.
Was I don't think Chappelle was even famous at that point, was he?
I think he had I want to say Half Baked came out. I don't remember the exact year of Half Baked,
Oh,
but
Half
like he
Baked is
still
98,
wasn't.
it says.
What's that?
98, so he's not famous yet.
No, he's not. Yeah, he's not there yet. Then, so but yeah, it's crazy to see him in that, and then to see basically such a small part in like relative to the rest of the guys and how long they survive and all that. It's crazy to just know that essentially he came out the most famous dude of the whole bunch.
Yeah, I could argue though, like Malkovich. I mean, not as famous, but
Yeah.
Buscemi.
It,
I mean, they're big names.
oh, they're huge, and I mean, like Buscemi is like one of the most recognizable humans in the world just because he is such a character actor in face and sound and style. But yeah, it was that thing that blew me away, and you go back and you forget. And you're like, oh yeah, Chappelle, geez, oh yeah, Ving Rhames, geez, like it's all those guys.
Yeah, and then also like John Cusack plays like a kind of small part in the movie.
Hmm.
I mean, not like in terms of like the part's integral to the story, but his screen time wasn't a whole lot.
No, not a ton. I think they just needed something to tie the plane to the ground. It was
Yeah.
just like every now and again they're like, oh yeah, there's stakes. Like yeah, the plane's up there, but like we care about it down here.
Yeah, we didn't need those two. Were like DEA agents. Is that what they were?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't need them. Like that, they could cut that out in that edit. We don't need John Cusack a whole lot, a little bit,
Yeah.
except like maybe the scene where he meets. Oh, Cameron Poe. That's Cage's name. When they meet Cameron Poe in the hangar, and he's like, "I'll talk to your daughter. I'll talk to your wife." Did you like my Nicolas Cage? I don't know why I gave John Cusack the Nicolas Cage voice just now.
Everybody should have had that voice. That would, could you just meant, oh, I'll
All
talk to your
right,
daughter.
all right, Bubba, we're doing this.
I don't think I'm gonna make it. Poor, poor guy. What else too? It's a scene that always kills me in that movie is because they're laying it on so thick and they're trying to like lead you in to believe one thing, but it's like my brain could never go there. Is there any chance that like any person would have thought that Steve Buscemi was actually going to kill that little girl in that scene?
I think I did until I rewatched it.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, I what I was reading was that they set it up to like do the old misdirect on you to like make you think they're good writers. And I think as a kid, when I watched it as an 11-year-old, was like, oh no. And then they showed that like medium shot of the cup broken in half after, and you're just like, oh no. But then when she comes running out of the house, like waving her Barbie over the head, I was like, oh, when the plane's leaving, you're like, oh cool, she's actually okay.
Yeah, and it was like, but to me, it was just that thing because they'd made him funny right off the bat. Like his first words were meant to kind of like jar you, like when he just starts like talking, he's talking about all the other guys and stuff. And I just had that thing. I mean, I was what, 15 when it came out, and I just remember seeing, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just cynical, but I was just sitting there and I'm seeing and they're like leading up and I'm like, there's no way he kills the, like of all the bad guys, they've set him up as the nice bad guy. Like he's not killing this little girl. I don't care how much they say he wants to kill this little girl. He's not doing it. And then like they kind of left and I'm like, are they just not going to tell you the fate of the little girl? And then she popped out and I'm like, oh yeah, see, he's cool.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty cynical too, but I'm the opposite of I believe whatever you tell me. So I was just like, they're implying that she gets molested and murdered, so that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
And then in hindsight, I was like, oh no, they were just kind of like
Yeah.
messing with us a little bit.
Yeah. I just want a little like short movie, be a DVD extra or something like that to tell you like what were they doing? And it's just him like playing dolls with her and just, and then all of a sudden he hears the plane. He's like, oh, I gotta go.
My big question about her whole existence, though, is why is there even this trailer park next to this airport that's in the middle of nowhere? Like,
I, I thought about that too. And the only answer I could come to was the fact that it's like, something just tells you that you're poor if you're near an airport. It's like, even like if you're like, you know, I live right next to LAX and it's like, oh, you've got this kind of rundown place and then you're talking and you're as the planes are landing and there's everybody's trying to scream over each other. And I feel like that's just it. They're just like, I don't know, poor people live by the airport.
that's fair. I agree with that logic, but they're in the middle of the desert and there's miles around them, and they're just like, here's this big land of mass, and it's all desert, so it's not like this is better desert land because all desert land is desert land, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, all right, airport needs to be next to the trailer park.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I have no, yeah, I have no explanation of it. I also don't know where her parents are during all this. She's dressed in her like Sunday finest, playing in the dirt, and they're just like I feel like she may have killed the parents. If I'm getting like maybe they bonded over the fact that she's a little murderer herself.
I love that fan fiction, and I never thought about that.
I'm gonna start writing that right now. I'm gonna get a Google Doc going.
Joe, that'd be the best thing that's ever happened.
That'd be amazing. What other scenes, like what standout scenes are there for you in this one?
Let's see. I the whole Cusack figuring out the Last Supper cipher. I was like, how did he figure it out that quickly? Is he that good of a code breaker? Because like with the eyeball thing, so he cuts the eyes out. It's a cipher on, and I was also like, how did we find the text that would work that perfectly on, where if you cut the eyes out in its place. So I just, for me, the logic was so flawed. Like, I'm okay with like suspending some disbelief, but the logic was very flawed there.
Yeah. No, I hear that, and it's one of those things. It's almost like they realized kind of too late that he needs to figure things out really fast so they could kind of line up with where everybody is. It's like, okay, we have to know this information like 5 minutes before they take off, so they can race and almost make it but not make it, and like do all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Also, this isn't necessarily a specific scene, but it's all right. So Cameron Poe's want, other than getting home, is getting his name is Odell, getting Odell a needle, and he can't find a needle. So then he asks. So Cameron and the old guy are under the truck, and the old guy's got to pee. The guy, I assume he like runs the airport, and the old guy is like, Cameron's like, I need to get my brother a needle, and the guy's like, but man, drugs are bad. And then Cameron like goes off on this quest to get a needle, and I was like, oh, the writer's like literally giving you a needle in a haystack situation right now, right? Like that, the writer was like, this is the smartest way to say needle in a haystack.
yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny too, because it's one of those writing tools where it's, yeah, they gave their little drugs are bad for you joke, but it's one of those ones where you're like, just write Cameron saying no, not drugs, like insulin, like medicine. I need medicine. Because the guy might have been able to help you. He's like, oh, actually, I know, like my wife's got the diabetes or
Yeah,
something like that, you know? Like,
yeah, and that wouldn't feel like a departure from the rest of the movie, right? Because this movie is not grounded by any means. So if we do ground it in that moment of, yeah, my wife's got diabetes, that guy's of the age where I believe that, right? Or he's like, I got diabetes. I'm like, all right, I believe that.
yeah, well, it's better than him just kind of scrambling and randomly finding some. He's like, oh, I just happened to find some in this abandoned airport.
Yeah.
It's like you would have been better off going to that little girl and asking,
Or that little girl probably killed her parents with the diabetes medicine.
oh man, OD'd on insulin.
And I do like when Cameron's looking for the needle and he finds the witchcraft stuff in a medical box.
Yep.
It's like, what is
Yeah,
that? What's going on?
yeah, I like to me, I almost feel like that was a gag, like some kind of surprise where they're like, they just told the prop guys, they're like, just put something in there that's not a needle. And then somebody's like, I got some voodoo crap sitting in the back here.
Let's voodoo it up.
That's awesome. That we could have had a whole nother character in that the weird air traffic controller who practices Santeria.
Yeah, I'm into that. Right. So I have a big question that's jumping back to the beginning of the movie. So I'm a little scattered, but the
That's
biggest
fine.
question next to Nicolas Cage's bad accent is why is his pregnant wife hanging out in a bar alone with strangers? Like she doesn't know these guys, right? And why is she even in the bar to begin with if she's pregnant?
Well, she works there, doesn't she?
Oh, did she? I missed that detail. I thought she was just like hanging out at the bar.
Yeah, my understanding of it, or at least my interpretation of it, is that she worked there because those guys like knew her and were just constantly flirting with it, and then she just blows it off like I imagine every bloody waitress in that kind of like meathead market that it goes just like, yeah, whatever, here we go again.
That
And
makes
that
way
was my,
more sense than I thought.
yeah. So we're doing okay. They almost had some logic there until the part where he defends his life and goes to jail for a really long time. And then also it felt like a really long time, but then also it couldn't have, like, when did he get her pregnant is the question I'm thinking right now. Is like, did they have time? Like, did he get her pregnant like in the bathroom on the way out?
Yeah,
Because
because
he literally comes home from being in service. Like, oh no, she was pregnant then, right? So I don't know. Somebody else got this woman pregnant. Is all I'm saying.
oh my god, that's another good fan theory. Yeah, because they made it seem like they hadn't seen each other in a long time, right?
Mhm.
When he did see her, she wasn't showing, so I would guess she was less than 6 months pregnant. But
Mhm.
like, you don't really like know that you're pregnant for the first 2 months, right? Or like, there aren't like
It's about 8 weeks. Yeah.
yeah. So like so 2 months. So she's between 2 and 6 months pregnant, correct? Roughly guesstimate, just based on what we're presented with. So he's been home between 2 and 6 months ago.
Yeah. And it's I don't know. I don't know much about like furlough and leave and all that. I just felt like that would, considering he was being discharged and like getting sent home, it just feels like he wouldn't have been on leave so fast. I mean, they don't address it, so it doesn't really matter. And most of my favorite movies are have like Jedi and shit in it, so I don't really have a leg to stand on as far as logic is concerned. But it was just something that stood out to me.
Yeah. Would you get a license plate that said "as kicker"?
I would, but I wouldn't put it on my, like, it would be like, I would have some like douchey summer car. That's the thing. It's like, but something that's worth less than the car I have now, it just happens to be like a soft top convertible. And that would be my, so I'd be like a failed lawyer in that car.
I probably do it on like a really stupid car, like a 1993 Ford Focus or like a Ford Tempo or something like that.
Actually, that's good because then that puts you in a scenario where you are like, they think you mean business. Then you're like, oh, nobody's putting that on on that car unless they can actually kick ass.
But with Z's, because that was cool in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. I get it. Well, what would it be now? Dollar signs?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, a dollar sign. And for the logic of Hollywood movie, I'm sure they'd let it slide.
Yeah.
With some like, it's the year 2040 and we gave away all the license plates with alphanumeric symbolism. So we started adding, it was like, oh yeah, cool, we knew that. That would happen. Ampersands and hashtags.
Symbols for 10 years, emojis 10 years after that.
Yeah.
I can't wait to be the first person with a poop emoji in my license plate.
I
See it
would
all
love
the time
that.
just to make cops have to call it out.
That's actually a really funny. I might write that into a sketch comedy thing.
Do it.
Yeah.
By all means, do it. And then have somebody who's an idiot in it and name him Joe. And just like Joe, and he's just the guy who's like, Joe, get out of here, stupid.
Get out of here, Joe. Stop cutting the cheese.
Oh, wah, wah.
uh, I do a lot of background acting,
Mhm.
and what I noticed about this movie is the prison guards are terrible background actors, the ones who didn't have dialogue.
Oh yeah. It's I very rarely pay attention, but when I do, yes, somebody always sticks out as being very off.
Yeah, my thing that they were off about, it might be just very nitpicky, me very like watching too much background stuff. Uh, it was when they were all getting on the plane in the very beginning of the movie,
Okay.
and the guards are all lined up on the runway, or I don't know what the entrance of a plane is called, and that like the ramp they're
Yeah.
walking up, and all the guards are lined up. They're all holding shotguns. Some of the guards are slouched over. Some are like holding their guns in like wrong places. And I was just like, I feel like this would be a little bit more uniform, like military almost.
Yeah, one would assume, right? That's it kills me too for a movie like this, which I mean, you're not having thousands of background actors, you're having maybe a dozen at a time or something like that. And then you see a movie like Lord of the Rings, who was managing hundreds of people all at once, like actors, stuntmen, just random passersby because they needed bodies and they just threw an orc mask on them and not going. And then to see them and like just in this uniform, terrifying, like you can go as far back as you want. I know some of them are CG back there, but like everybody's into it. And then yeah, those ones you'll always see somebody like restaurants are always really bad because like you'll see the one couple who's really playing it up. They decided to give themselves a backstory, and the whole thing is like, we just had a fight, but we decided we got over it, and this is our dinner, and we're back into it. And then you've got the other two people, and like, are they even talking to each other? Like the one guy's just like looking off here, and then just waving a potato in the air.
Yeah, I started picking up on all that stuff while doing background, and I'm just like, they don't really give you a lot of direction. They don't yell at you if you're wrong. They don't stop because of you. You're not important, so they might like scrub you out or something. Uh, and you have a lot of downtime when you do that. So you're on set for like 10, 12 hours, and you're only used for like an hour maybe. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I never did this idea, but I always was like, I'm gonna write backstories for all these characters just for fun to like put fan fiction. But I never ended up doing that, alas.
Well, hey, there's always time.
Yes, I mean, I could still go back and write all of that.
That would be an interesting I make it almost sound like a true crime podcast or something like that. You just tell the stories, show an image of yourself in the background of whatever, and then just have he was a troubled man.
There's a show, it got canceled after one season, but called New Amsterdam. Are you familiar?
I am familiar with it, yes.
I'm in the pilot of New Amsterdam getting wheeled. I look like I had a lobotomy in the background. And then separate episode, so I was in the first and the last episode actually. And in the last episode I died in a pipe bomb explosion at a club, separate character, separate person. And I want to write the story of how this guy went from getting a lobotomy to partying. But we didn't do that yet, so.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those, especially those procedurals, those are the kinds of questions you get to ask. You're like, whoa, this escalated fast. Yeah. The one acting role I got to do was for a Niagara Regional Police training video. And it was through the college because I took film and television, and they let us all come in. And what happened was my wife just turned off all my lights. I'm going to murder her.
I wondered what happened.
You see how I have to live here? This is what happens when you don't have a studio. Okay.
What about this background? Whoa.
Ah! All right, we are back. So yeah, anyways, they gave me a lot of leeway, and they were sitting there, they're like, okay, so we're going to start this scene, and the other guy has cut your hand, and so you're talking to the police, blah blah. That's background stuff. I was just sitting there, and I'm like, really playing up the ow ow ow. Then the next time we shot, I actually got to go and testify, and I improvised for 15 minutes about what happened in this thing, and how I technically sort of started it with a comment, a drunken comment, and then the guy pulled out a knife and we tried to stop it. And it went for so long. I got the video afterwards. They gave me a copy of the video. Not only is that scene only 1 minute long, there's music playing over me, and you don't hear 1 second of my dialogue. I'm like, why did you let me waste all that time?
Oh, they do that. They just let you go. But that's what they do, jerks.
I know. And then I got in trouble with the other guy because I said something about him that actually stuck, because he had those eyebrow rings.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that my character said something about like a shower curtain rod or something like that, and that's what started the whole fight. And then he's like, "Oh, come on, man!" And so now I'm in his shitty books, and it didn't even get me any like proper screen time. Not worth it.
Gigs though, those are fun.
Mm-hmm.
What was I gonna say? Oh, I liked when they're like debating if they're gonna plant the gun on him or not, right? In the beginning, the DEA agent, Cusack, and all them, they're like, should we put the gun on him? And then someone says, give him a gun. And I don't know why, but all I could think when they said give him a gun was, leave the gun, take the cannolis. I don't know why. I don't know if it's even like in the same ballpark, but that's where my brain went. And I was like, this is like the Godfather of weird movies.
It's one of those things. It's certain things become iconic, even if they're not fully like pop culture iconic, but it's like the way that like my wife is just a thing now. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to the store with my wife, and everybody goes, my wife. And it's just, there are automatic triggers in everybody's brain now. And I get those all the time for all sorts of nonsensical things. And I'll repeat them back to even my daughter, and she'll be like, oh, I'm going to this. And I repeat some random thing that she's never heard of before, and she's gotten like something from like This Is Spinal Tap or something like that, and she's like, these go to 11, and she's got nothing.
She's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty true. It's just being a father in general is just getting stared at blankly until you leave the room. That's pretty. Yeah, that's the one.
Like this face right here.
Awesome. Did we have any other scenes or anything? I'm just trying to think.
Let's see. This is more of a thought than like a whole scene overall, but everyone was cool about all of the bad stuff they were doing except rape. And I'm not justifying rape, but they were just like, yeah, it's cool to do this, it's cool to do that, but that's the one bad guy. And I was like,
that's
trying to spread the bad around is mostly what I'm trying to do.
Oh, absolutely. And that's always been a thing too. Like they hear like just about anything. They're like, you know what they do to rapists in prison? I'm like, I assume punish them just like they punish the murderers.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it was like, no, we don't like rape. And I'm like, but well, how are you going to punish them? We're going to rape them. Oh, cool.
Like Dave Chappelle lit a dude on fire after calling him racist Native American words, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's fine because he didn't rape anyone."
Mhm. It was a different time.
Yeah.
It was, and then like we did one of our earliest movies was Revenge of the Nerds, and I mean that movie is a movie that's technically full of rape, and it's just and you're just kind of like, okay, so what are we? And then you go to that, and you're like, okay, man, we've really taken a jump. From the 80s to the 90s is like, nope, that's no good anymore. And then basically everything they did on the plane by 2001 became completely unacceptable. All that liquid that Chappelle was bringing with him on board, that would not fly, quite literally.
No, definitely not. My big question, though, that I missed maybe is how Chappelle got back on the plane when he was in the hangar when the plane was taking off.
That's a good question. Wait, didn't he just get stuck?
That's how he ended up dying. But
Yeah.
the plane's taking off. Chappelle's in the hangar putting the transponder on the tourist plane, the little red tourist plane. That's why the
Oh,
helicopters attack the tourist plane at first. So Chappelle, when he's flirting with that woman, and he's like,
yeah.
"I haven't seen a woman as beautiful as you in 5 to 10," which is
Oh, yeah.
which is a funny
I
joke.
don't know.
And he runs away because he's like, "Wait, do you hear the sound of a plane right now?" And then like you're like,
Yeah.
"Where'd Chappelle go?" I'm like, "Oh, he's gone from the movie because he got left behind." And then like 20, 30 minutes later, they're like, "Nope, here's his body."
Yeah. That would have, well, that was my assumption was he tried to grab onto the wheel and climb up, and then when it came up, it crushed him.
Oh, that makes sense. I didn't think about that.
That would be but to me, I mean, that's a crappy way to write him out. What I would have probably done instead, although I guess they needed his body after to sling it out. So they had a message to write or whatever. But I would have loved to have seen a scene where he got busted, where like they show up at the thing and it's just him because he got let go, and now he's just, and then just let him go off for another couple of minutes. He's friggin' Chappelle.
Yeah.
It, you might have got your first time rich bitch way before Chappelle.
I would have loved that. The one quote that stood out to me in the entire movie is, "Why couldn't you just put the bunny back in the box?"
Oh my god. It's I don't know if that was them going for their own like Schwarzeneggery you got to have that line because the fight scenes we get put the bunny back in the box. I don't know if they just I don't know. See, sometimes I can't enter these writers' minds when I'm like, did they just think that was really funny, or did was it a stinger for him? Like that was just, I'm gonna bookend this with the bunny in the box.
Oh man. And then the last thing that I have at all is the little girl's face when she's hugging her father for the first time. She looks like she wants to like evaporate into thin air. She's just like, "Oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me."
Yeah, well, and I mean, meeting your father for the first time is one thing, but to meet your dirty, bloody, sweaty, like, yeah, I kind of get that. He's like,
Yeah.
hug me, and he's just like blood oozing from the side of his face while there's a fire in the background, and like somebody's like piece of his arm like off the side is like, don't worry about that, honey, I got you a bunny, don't worry about. And he fished it out of the sewer. Well, like he like just saved it from going in the sewer. I'm like, here's a thought: don't give her the bunny, wait a couple days. Oh, with all the craziness with the murder and all, I forgot to give you this. Then he actually just Walmart like a couple days later or whatever.
Well, since they were in Vegas, I was very disappointed he didn't do like a bunny out of a hat trick for her.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a magic trick for you. It's just something to endear him, because basically he's just like, you need to embrace me as your father and don't worry about the quintuple homicide.
I killed a lot of people to get here and I didn't clean myself up, so excuse the corpse smell on your daddy here.
Yeah. But one would assume that they probably would have gathered them up and put them to, we're going to bring you to the police station. We're going to bring your daddy there in a little bit. Maybe would have even given him a chance to like clean up or put something on, like, hey, here's a shirt, like from the $5 rack in one of the many Vegas gift shops.
Yeah, instead I think he justified it though by saying, I meant to get a haircut.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, okay, all right, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's decent comedy, but it doesn't work over like Leanne Rimes singing "How Do I Live With."
Oh. Yeah, the whole point of that, like that plays in the very beginning and the end of the movie, right? And for me, that felt like it was fan service to fans that aren't there, of like romance fans.
Yes.
I feel like it's so 1997, if we're going to travel back in time a little bit, 18-year-old watching this movie, he's taking his girlfriend there. So if I were a little bit older, my mom wouldn't be there, her mom wouldn't be there. And I just feel like that would have been like catering to her. So like, at least it wasn't terribly bad. It was only kind of bad because Leanne Rhymes sang to us.
For sure. And it's like, and I picture myself in that scenario. And I mean, that one wasn't as bad, but I remember watching Armageddon, which was kind of around the same time-ish. And I remember there's that one bit where it was just like it was just one of those, I love you. I love you. It was, and me and my friend, like I could hear there was a pile of girls just off to the side. So like far enough away from us to know that they're not with us, which was just how girls in general acted. And I remember this moment happened, and you can hear them all go like, "Oh!" It's like Liv Tyler and Ben Affleck loving on each other, and then we just went and just started laughing so hard, and we got daggers shooting at us from these girls, and I'm like, okay, that one made more sense. But like, yeah, Con Air is so testosterone filled that I don't think like it's, no offense to 11-year-old you, but it's not a date movie.
No, it was a terrible choice. I should have Googled what also came out at that time to see what my options were. So I don't remember why Con Air was the choice, but it might have also just been what was showing.
For sure. And I think my final question, probably the most important one, where does this date rank among your first dates in your life?
Ooh. Uh, let's see. There's a silly picture that came out of it, so that was good. I could send you that after if you want.
I'd love to see it.
The after effect. And we also did go on a second date like 10 years later. Weird story. She lived a couple of towns over from me, and then she moved away, and so I started dating someone from her town, someone else. So I dated two people from that town. And so I'm like 21, 22, and one of my girlfriend and my first date's friend's mutual friend passed away. And so she came back to town to go to the funeral. And then the three of us went on a double date. Is that or a third wheel date? I don't know what to call that. But we all like
Oh,
went
I
out.
love that.
Yeah. So we went on 2 dates,
Well,
if we're being technical.
nice. Hey,
Yeah,
to me, this is a romantic story. Like I'm hearing Leanne Rimes sing in my ear right now as this is going on.
exactly. I would say it has to rank up there pretty I almost said like pretty god darn high because I feel like Cameron Poe just got into my soul. I think it's got to be up there because we still kind of keep in touch a little bit. And this was in 1997, and it's so 23 years of online dating. But
Well,
I mean,
that's
she's
great.
like married and happy now, so.
That's awesome. I think my worst first date was also to a movie. Couldn't tell you what movie it was. It would have been in 2004. I think it was the second last date I went on before I met my now wife.
Nice.
And I had recently just started shaving my head. And it was I had shaved all nice and clean, made myself smell good, look good. Well, relative to, to what I can do. And I went to pick her up. And so I drive up in the car. She gets in the passenger seat. We drive to the movies. I get out of the car. We get to the movies, get out of the car. We end up switching sides. And she looks at me and she goes, "Oh, God." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Your head." and I look and I touch my head. I'm bleeding down the side of my head and have been since I shaved my head. I nicked it and it was just going down, and I went into the washroom and it looked like a horror movie down the left side of my head, but she didn't see that till after we got out of the car. And that was, nothing went well after that. I think I was so mortified. Like I just started blanking out the whole thing.
That feels like the opposite of something about Mary when she gets the hair gel in her hair.
Yeah. Well, because it's a much different liquid and there was no hair involved.
Yeah, it made me feel like that, but also like a horror version of that.
Yeah. But it's just like, I just picture her thinking like, oh my God, I got into the car with this dude.
My worst date
Oh man.
was not as, I mean, I matched someone on Tinder a few years ago, like 5 years ago, and she said, "What are you doing tonight?" I was like, "I got a stand up show." She said, "Can I come to your stand up show?" I said, "No, that's weird. Let's go on a date first." And then she ended up going to my stand up show anyway. And then after, gave me notes on how to be funnier.
Oh my God.
And I think that's my worst date ever. And then we got
That's
drunk
terrible.
and made out against a dumpster.
Yeah. No, I get that still, because I mean, what it's still an option, but oh my God, that's not a great one.
No, it was awful.
So well, it's good to end on these bad dates because it really raises up the level of that. It's a young love date to a really weird love movie, I guess, if you want to really break it down to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would watch this on a date again.
Why not? We got to find it like if playing in some old theater or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, Ronnie, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Thank you so much for doing the episode. Can you let everybody know where they can find you on social media and all that?
Sure. Thank you for having me. This was a blast. Social media, it's just Ronnie Pascale on everything. Instagram, Facebook. Don't Facebook friend me. I don't like that. I mean, you can, but not everyone else can. Instagram, Twitter. And then for some weird reason, YouTube wouldn't let me just use my name. So it's Ronnie Pascale NYC. Because they're like, there's more than one Ronnie Pascale. You can't be greedy.
How dare you?
Dare they? They're like, you need to be more specific in who you are.
Awesome. And Roast Yourself drops on Saturdays. Am I correct?
Saturdays, yes, Saturdays 10 p.m. Eastern time, and then we're going to take a break for December. I might do the first week of December. I haven't decided. That's the perk of not running a theater and just doing it on my own schedule. Yeah, it's weekly, but also if you go on my YouTube, there's every episode that's ever happened. So I think we're at like 25 now. I lost count. I think it's 25.
All right. So everybody make sure to go and check out Ronnie Pascale NYC. Don't forget the NYC for the for YouTube, and make sure to check those episodes out. Ronnie, thank you so much for joining us.
It was a blast.